everybody for joining today. So I thought maybe, what I really like about today's webinar is that we kind of talked a little bit about technology and what it can do for you in the first webinar. Now we're kind of digging into the data. So there's a little bit of method here to our madness, where now we want to kind of dig in and get into some pretty cool statistics. So maybe before I go any further, maybe Charlie, jump to the next page here, and we'll just kind of tell you a little bit about who Lightspeed is, and I'll make it quicker just because you might have heard this from last time. But so Lightspeed, if you're not familiar with them, they acquired Chronogolf technology, club management software solution. They're a point of sale vendor company where we provide solutions to the retail and the restaurant industry. Today, they're just over 110,000 customers. So what's really wicked about this is that we've been exposed to quite a few cool partners, or just a knowledge base of information outside of golf. And so that's what we've been trying to educate, is bringing some of that outside world into the golf space. So with Dax, our CEO, he really, his goal is to empower the SMB, the small, medium-sized business world, and really bring everybody to life. And if you've seen a little bit online, we're really into about the online world, and kind of bridging that to your business. And so it's pretty interesting, the angles that they take, and how we're kind of layer that into to golf. So really what we're going to do for the next session here is we're going to talk about, I'm sorry, we got Charlie, maybe just a quick introduction. Charlie, do you want to say a quick hello?
Nope, just, I mean, anyone that was on the previous call, Charlie Martin, work with Lightspeed as well, alongside Matt, PGA of Canada professional, and have been working with Lightspeed for about a year, and then was in the club world for about 15 before that.
Right on. So for the agenda today, we're going to cover some email marketing best practices. We're going to actually touch base a little bit about SMS marketing, as that's become quite popular these days. And then, and Charlie's going to cover those two, and myself, I'm going to cover loyalty. It's, for those that maybe saw my presentation a couple of years ago at the T-Talks conference, it'll be a little bit about that. But yeah, so we'll kind of walk through it, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So how should you leverage customer data for your marketing initiatives? Well, really, at the end of the day, your technology solution, it's all about gathering data, and what do you do with that information, and I kind of got this big data image on here, and there's so many different forms and ways that you can be doing and leveraging that data for your business. So Charlie's going to start off with talking about collecting customer data, and then walking through, sort of leveraging that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to collecting customer data, so there's a number of different ways we can do that. And I mean, the largest one that we see through most golf courses is obviously online booking. So whether that customer data is something as simple as just last name, first name, email address, or phone number, or maybe it's capturing a credit card at the time of booking to mitigate cancellations in the future. But this isn't even just online booking in the context of golf. This could be for other services as well. So whether this is using perhaps a scheduling tool for booking lessons or clinics, or even something like indoor golf, right? The more tools we put in place to put in front of the customer beyond just them calling in and making a booking in that way, the more data we're able to collect. And a lot of it's coaching too, and staff, making sure that maybe we have fail safes in our software that says, okay, I want to force capture email, or force capture any point of contact information, or it won't let my staff member actually save that booking at that time. This also includes website forms. So something that I know has been very popular in the past is something as simple as putting a contact form at the bottom of your website, or maybe a pop-up with like a request to put in an email address for a newsletter. So simple things like that are also going to be a pretty significant driver of sort of building that email database that we'll touch on in a minute. Social media promos. So Westwood Plateau, good example of an email they send out periodically just to kind of advertise any social media channels that they are using. What's cool with these two, and where we see a lot of clubs experience success, is when it comes to like exclusive offers. So maybe something that's a specific promo code that you distribute only through Instagram, or something that you build through, or that you distribute just through Twitter, Facebook, whatever it may be. What's interesting with these is you want to be able to use promo codes or a methodology that allows you to track redemptions on those, but not only track redemptions, track where these bookings are coming in from. And that's something we'll touch on again in a second. And then the last one, last two, trade shows, of course. So whether this is using one of the many golf expo shows that exist, or maybe even something south of the border, but the ability to say, particularly obviously in that public or semi-private space, saying, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to sell this package, or we're going to give this away. Simply fill out this card, and then actually adding those names to your database. Now, what's interesting with that is when importing them, depending on almost any tool now that you're using from an email marketing standpoint is importing them with tags. So the more data that we tie to each of those individual customers, the easier it's going to be for us to market to them in the future. So if somebody comes to me at a trade show booth, maybe I can send a future email to that tagged group of customers saying, hey, we're going to be at this trade show again this year. Last year you purchased our 5 for 200 packages. Is this something you'd be interested in seeing us do again? One of the things that we see as a recurring data capture point is that internally, 83% of customers are more willing to share their data to create a more personalized experience. So whether that's less blanket emails, as we'll speak to in a second, or even targeted ads in the future. So again, kind of in that same point that we were touching on the previous slide, is really figuring out where those customers are coming in from. So whether it's something, maybe your bookings are coming in specifically through maybe your club app, they're coming in through the online booking on your website, they're coming in as walk-ins to your club inquiring about membership, maybe they're coming from a third-party marketplace, which is something that we can touch on again in a minute, looking at kind of different channels through which our rounds are coming in, and then how do we get those rounds funneled into a channel that's more profitable specifically for us.
I think, Charlie, just maybe just to kind of jump in, what's really cool is we've seen the industry average for online bookings has doubled from 10 to 20%. We're seeing on average with Lightspeed customers over 40%. And what's really driving that, like in driving their data collection, is the online bookings tool, right? It really starts there in getting that information and having your own promotions or driving or communicating that to the golfers to go online. It has a whole funnel through right down to collecting their data, right? It takes so much off of you. And with this time of this movement of golf courses offering prepaid tee times because of COVID, it substantially grew courses databases. So it's a great opportunity to be executing on some of the following things you're going to bring up.
And in that same point, it's like Matt said, online bookings increased, but the graphs on this slide are actually from a club that we've worked with in Europe, and they're seeing 56% of their bookings coming in through mobile compared to only 14 coming through the widget on their website. So between mobile and phone calls, that's 80% of their bookings right there. So they would know quickly that, okay, maybe our mobile strategy has been successful, or maybe we need to lean into social media more because the majority of the engagements that our customers are having with the club are coming on a cell phone. At the end of the day, every year you're going to see, it's not like there's going to be more people booking from a browser annually. It's going to be more people booking from a mobile standpoint. So once we have that data, how do we start to look at organizing it in buckets that are going to be the most useful to us? So for example, in email marketing, that's something as simple as segregating your target list. So let's say we've done a really good job of data capture at our golf course, whether it's when we sign people up for memberships or through online bookings. But now we want to start to segment those lists and actually target specific groups. So whether that's age groups, maybe it's an area code. So if I know specifically, like previously I worked at a resort property, and we knew in the months of April through June until school was out, really our core market was local. Then it shifted into the American consumer, and then back to local after September 15th. So we really targeted our specials kind of specifically using the area code or the postal code data that we had on file. We can sort by gender or even specific behaviors. So maybe I want to run a retention campaign where I start to look at, okay, who is a newly acquired customer this year, but hasn't visited the facility in more than 40 days. So starting to look at kind of different customer buckets and creating strategies within those. This can come, and like I said, this is sending targeted emails, but also allowing you to kind of make more personalized emails where clubs experience a lot of like pushback or people unsubscribing is when you have that 20,000 customer email list and we send that blast email out to everyone. Whereas we see open rates go up by about 50% when we start to have targeted subject lines. So as soon as you start to say, like, if you're having that maybe a ladies specific tournament, instead of sending it out to your entire database saying, hey, we're hosting a ladies pro-am on this day, maybe you can say like, hey ladies, or something like that in your subject line, where you get an opportunity to target that market more specifically. So go ahead, Matt.
Just maybe before you going any further here, what's really cool about the channel side is, you know, I work with a number of big management groups in the US, and what they do with the channel, and I think this is super important, is certainly if you're working with distribution partners, is that you know that this customer is coming in from a third party and they have a whole campaign, they have a whole program in place in order to communicate to that specific customer, right? They know that, hey, listen, I have that customer now in front of me. It's my job to convert them to book through my website next time, right? And these big management groups, they have a whole game plan in place, you know, and it starts with, you know, when they arrive at the counter, and making sure that they did get their email address. Some don't pass that email over, but it's certainly easily accessible to get it through different means, through checking in, or if it's a starter or whatnot. But it's amazing to see how much effort they put into it, and the ability for them to convert that customer to get them to book on their website. And I don't know if you're going to go through it a little bit later, but you know, there's tools that actually can automate that whole component of, hey, listen, they came through a different channel. Keep messaging them until they come through my own channel, right? Through my own booking channel. So I think that's something that certainly can be improved on in the industry, is when that customer is there. And I'm sure, you know, to the people that are viewing, they might have heard that in other seminars, but have a game plan in place for those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to that same point, like, I mean, so much of what we've talked about so far is really geared more in that public and semi-private space. But I mean, those targeted or segregated email lists can also apply in the private space as well. So whether that's like newly acquired members, so creating, okay, this number of customers has come in as new acquisitions, so I can have a series of campaigns post the day we've acquired that customer. Maybe an email goes out at the end of week one or before they even come to the club the first time that says, okay, here's where the locker room is, here's how you get into the parking lot, whatever those things may be. But then also starting to create things like, okay, this golfer has played as a member guest 5 times this year and he's eclipsed whatever number that is. So now we know that this is somebody that's using the club. How do we convert this person to a member? So whether that's through trial membership programs, but starting to look at tracking that data, pulling those names out, and then creating a targeted campaign to flip them. It's kind of that. I mean, it's kind of that whole industry. It's that whole idea of like, you often hear them say it about the NFL. Like, the NFL is not getting big by creating more new fans. It's just converting the casual fan into a regular fan. So when it comes to automation, so as Matt mentioned previously, this is when we start to look at, okay, we're using that data and we've sort of segmented these customers into our buckets or pods, but how do I maybe take the off season or take the winter to set up automated emails and then have those fire out? So I can pre-break out my groups and then just establish triggers. So maybe with something like a birthday club, that's a contact's birthday, or maybe it's days since last played, days since added. Maybe it's a membership ending, or maybe they have a tee time coming up in 12 hours and it is in the context of a private club and you want to give them dress code and guest parking information, things like that. So starting to look more at like, how do we build these things and then just have them fire without me having to go in each day and fire them manually. We see automated email campaigns based on the data that we've tracked are generating 320% more revenue or a greater number of bookings than non-automated emails. And a lot of that is just the manual labor is not required to actually get those out. When it comes to tracking performance and adjusting on the fly. So, I mean, we look a lot at the idea of A/B emails in the marketing context. So saying, okay, I'm going to send this email out. Now I'm going to send a similar email with a different subject line, and kind of take that scientific method of saying, okay, if I change one thing slightly, how does that impact my click through, or my links that get clicked within my email, or my conversion to an actual booking from that email? So starting to kind of look at these emails that we've built and then be more strategic about adjusting them slightly and kind of toying with the race car to make it more effective.
Well, and I think, Charlie, like, you're talking about some things that I think would have been completely over our head, a number of years ago. But what's really neat is these tools today allow you to do this stuff very easily, right? Like, I never would have thought that I'd be thinking about changing my subject lines, having an A/B kind of testing environment, right? But that's what these systems do for you, is they allow you to do that and analyze it. So as your jobs now have become more in a marketing role and having to figure out some of these other things and wear different hats, so we'll have these tools have evolved in order to help you with that. So know that, as you sort of dig into some of these, it's not completely crazy. It's actually fairly straightforward to do. And what's pretty neat about it is a lot of this stuff is dynamic. So you almost set it and forget it. Mm-hmm. I think, Charlie, you were talking about that with one of our customers. That was pretty neat. Like, you literally can just set up these campaigns that say, listen, send them a survey to all my golfers that played yesterday, right? I think we see that with a lot of our customers, and like we see in the industry, when you fill out a survey from Home Depot or something, right, you get something for it, or it just adds more reason to interact. Right. But these tools automatically will do that for you. Right. It's based on tee time trigger data, not just on general, like, this is a senior golfer or a junior golfer. Right. This is tee time behavior triggers.
Yeah. And I mean, this can be, and there's a number of different ways that we can look at this too. Like, I don't know, like, if you've ever gone to a website, you go online and you fill the shopping cart with something, but then you abandon the cart. And now all of a sudden, 24 hours later, you get that trigger email from whatever online store that you've gone to that says, hey, you've left this behind. Why not save 15% off or get free shipping on whatever this item is, right? It's starting to look at things like that other industries outside of golf that are a little bit more progressive have been doing. And it's like, how can we take those kind of nuggets of success from them and move it into the golf space?
Yeah. Like using the old Ron Popeil, the set it and forget it systems, right? Like, I could say to myself here, but yeah, like, it literally is a set it and forget it, but you can create many of these triggers now that will automatically do that. And so it's that engagement. It's keeping, your brand, your course in front of those people to remind them to play golf. Sometimes it's not telling them to play golf, but it's just a reminder about you, your site, and just gives them a reminder to play golf.
And then across, I mean, not even speaking just to our customers, and similarly on the last slide with automation, I mean, that's not a Lightspeed specific thing, that's available in a number of environments. But starting to look at SMS marketing, I mean, when you get the notifications that come to your phone, if it's an email, it's a swipe left and archive right away, right? But when you see that it come through as a text message, you're so much more likely to read that. So, I mean, we're seeing a lot of clubs now make that move into text message marketing. It's a little bit more personal. Your golfers can actually, we can do that live from the golf course. So maybe you've got somebody on site at the facility and they're up at the driving range and the starter needs them on the first tee. Well, that's as simple as a ping notification to their phone to say, hey, you're on the tee right now. The research that we've seen from a marketing standpoint is that text messages receive an open rate of an average of 90% compared to 20% from emails, and your response rates are about 7.5 times higher. So, I mean, things as simple as that, it's just leading us to believe that you're going to be much more effective as we start to use other mediums other than that traditional email marketing methodology. So this can be stuff as simple as a welcome text or a check-in at the pro shop reminder 15 minutes ahead of the round, or maybe you want to send something out to people that are at the facility on the given day, or somebody who's been at the facility recently, letting them know about 20% off a specific meal package that you're having, or maybe you're doing like take home ingredient bundles when you want to advertise that to specifically your members. So starting to get, again, doing similar actions, but using a more personal medium to do so.
No, and I think what's neat about the texting side is, the way that technology's evolved is how you can embed this stuff right into the application, but also, you can have it set up now so you can actually text your golf course business line and have that funnel right through into an application. So, stuff like this is very popular, like in the hospitality hotel industry. We see it right after you check in, you're getting a message saying, how's your room? Did everything work out? Do you need anything? Right? There's no reason why we can't be doing that as well in golf, right? As they're out on the golf course. It provides another means for people to communicate back if they're on the course and they're looking for the beverage card, or there's an issue, right? Rather than them calling in or emailing, right? Text has always been that easy way to communicate nowadays, right? So it's less intrusive. So definitely, I think it's something that is lagging in the industry. It's starting to pick up speed, and something that should be invested in. The cool thing is from a marketing standpoint, there's also a ton of tools available, to use SMS for marketing purposes that are out there. So almost similar to what you talked about on the email side, right, with segmentation. All of that can be triggered into a text messages as well.
Where we see tons and tons of success with SMS marketing is surveys. So, I mean, you're much, much less likely to open a survey if it comes through as an email, particularly an email that might be getting funneled by whatever your email client is into like a promotions folder. Whereas if that comes through as a text message and it's a link right in there, you're so much more likely to click that link and do that 5-question survey mobilely than you are if you have to actually go to a browser-based link or open your web client.
Yeah. Cool. No,
again, just following up more on that previous slide.
Yeah, and these are stats from one of our partners, right? Like 98%, like I'll take anything in the 90s, right? That are being opened, right? This is saying that are, being read within the minutes of being, received. And that they've read it, which is really cool, right? With an email, it just goes off into, you don't know much about really what's going on there. People prefer this type of message nowadays, right? It's so much easier. And 43% of customers interact with the brand via text message now, right? So, and those stats are only going up, and I think they're only going to continue. So, right on. Oh. So, if you want to go back one.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, so loyalty. This is sort of my favorite part that I'm going to kind of walk through. But when we talk about data, and we talk about online bookings and we talk about really all of the messaging that you kind of walk through here, Charlie, really one of the things that I feel are a great way to drive that interaction with your customers through loyalty programs. I see so many just basic programs out there that don't really do much, right? There may be a basic way of collecting some information, but there's really nothing else behind it. So, if you want to go to the next slide. Mm-hmm. It really what it's about is, go back up on, there you go. It's all about changing your customers' behavior with loyalty. So think about this, right? Like Tim Hortons, right? They came out with their mobile app with the roll up the rim to win tool. What did that do? Well, it drives engagement, drives communication, it drives marketing. It drives people during a time that might be a little bit lower on their end for sales. It drives people to go to them rather than going to Starbucks or somewhere else, or it just gets them to think twice about where they're going to go get their next cup of coffee, right? Same with airlines, same with you name it, right? Loyalty programs are everywhere, and it's kind of like an expected thing. But, I kind of told the story when I moved out here to Montreal. There was this cool ice cream shop that I go into, and it's like $8 for an ice cream cone, and they put all these things on it, right? And I thought, man, this is a first time, it'll be the last. But then I got their mobile app, and started to kind of see the program that they put in place, and they make it fun. They make it interactive. So kind of, like it's just not about sign up to my, you get a 15% off on future rounds. There's just so much more that you can do with it. So if we go to the next slide. So here's kind of what I want you to think about, right? From the NGF, they said that the kind of common golfer plays around 20 rounds of golf a year, right? And the average number of courses they play is about 8. So, we maybe plus or minus, maybe there's some differences there in Canada, but let's say we're kind of close on that. So if you're the one that's getting those 12 rounds, that's pretty cool, right? That's good. You're in good shape. But if you're the 13th, 14th, and so on golf course in the rotation, what are you doing to get that golfer, right? So we know. So these are good stats. These are stats from from the NGF that are pretty clear about consumer behavior. So what are you doing to get that customer to play more rounds of golf at your golf course? So one of the things that Lightspeed has is, and this is really neat, why I really jump on this, is we started to work with best of breed loyalty providers. And these companies really kind of taught me something. It wasn't about having a cool system to assign points to buying a green fee. It was about engagement is really what their tools were. It gave them lots of data, lots of information about that customer, purchasing information, and allowed them to then market and target them directly around their habits. So what they've seen in the business, and these are outside of golf companies, but they are experts, right? They say that 66% of loyal customers spend up to 66% more than your other customers, right? So you're starting to build that loyal customer. They're willing to spend more because they have a reason to do it, because they're gaining something, right? It's the 80-20 rule that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. I'm not sure if that's exact in golf, but it's I've heard that number kind of tossed around a little bit. 86% of consumers are less likely to stray from brands when they have reward programs. So again, that goes to giving them a reason, like getting them to change their behavior to come play at your facility, right? So, they're booking a foursome, and this happened a lot with me and my buds. They always wanted to go play this other course because they had, their card, their program. And, at one point I just said, listen, I'm done playing that course. I want to go play somewhere else. And, they all wanted their whatever it was that they were getting, right? But it proves to work. And 58% of marketers use data to identify their best customers. So we also know that it costs 5 times as much to acquire that new customer than one that you already have. So these are all, and I'm not going to go through all the other stats, but I mean, if you think about it, right, like there's a good reason why these businesses spend so much money and time into these programs. And it's something to really kind of rethink. If you want to go to the next slide, Charlie. Mm-hmm. So sort of my kind of rules here, or kind of ways to kind of put together a good program is, one is be different. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide, but use loyalty programs to drive behavior. Make sure that these programs expire. So not a word of a lie, man. My Tim Hortons app just told me my points were going to expire here. I thought I was going to accumulate my points forever and then just go on like 2 months of free coffee. No, they expire after a year. So there I am in there, turning around, going in, using my free coffee, right? So expiries have a lot of benefit for you outside of just maybe an accounting means and having that stuff linger out there. But again, it drives behavior. Get creative, we talked about. Reward your top spenders, right? Like I actually sat on a webinar the other day, and they were talking about, managing by walking around and going up to your top spenders. Again, you got to know that data first, but going around and thanking them, buying them lunch, buying them a beer, giving them something. So that's huge. The one I talked about a little bit about the ice cream shop, the little wins, that was one thing that they had in their app where they, I didn't have to buy 10 ice creams. I only had to buy 2 more to get something small, but it was kind of cool, right? So don't make it so that you have to play 10 rounds of golf in order to get something. It's okay to give them, a cart, maybe after 3 or 4 rounds or 5 rounds, right? Like you just have to make sure the economics work out. But the little wins gives you a really cool way or good way to communicate with people, right? And again, these tools are also automatic. They can you can set them up to send out those triggers so that they when they hit certain point levels, that it's telling them that there's something available for them to be redeemed. It also will tell them, hey, listen, that there's something coming up. You only need a few more rounds or a few more points in order to get XYZ for free. So that's kind of cool. And then make it fun, which we've talked about. I'm always about making things a little bit fun and unique at your property. I've worked with some pretty neat people over my life here that where they certainly do that. I know one guy that he even said, listen, I can't remember how many points it was, but they'd send them to Scotland for some golf, right? So that was pretty cool. So creativity, this is something that really where you can play with the dials here and really kind of target people. So really point assignment can depend upon the time of transaction. So kind of back to my point about driving behavior. Let's say your capacity is down during certain times, right? We see this in other programs that are out there where you do layer in additional points during your slow times or in your off season. You can change your point redemption or points that you give out by time of year as well. So those are things to think about that you can play with in order to drive behavior. We talked about the little wins, the tier programs. So here's an example on the right from Ratcliffe Golf down in the Carolinas there, where they have a 3-level program where after they hit a certain number of points, then they get to a tier. We all have seen this with airlines. It's why I always flew Air Canada and I was loyal to them and would end up spending all day flying when I could have taken a direct flight with a different airline. No, I stayed loyal to my Air Canada, right? Because I needed my prestige status and I wanted to bypass the lineup, right? So tiers are huge. Here's the examples of what this one facility did. But they gave away a basket of balls every time they played once they hit silver. Then once they hit gold, they actually gave them food, which was neat. And then once they hit platinum, they were getting a free cart. I don't think that's unheard of, right? Like they own the market, this group down there, right? And people, that loyalty program is so valuable to them now. Like it's huge. They're so dependent upon it. They might have created something that they weren't expecting, but it's huge. And those customers are always checking their point balances, and they want to make sure that they got those purchases, right? They're expecting something coming up, right? So that was something to think about, right? I highly encourage that. The draws, yeah.
I was just going to say something, and one of the things that we haven't really touched on here, but I know is something that the Ratcliffe Golf Group does to a lot of success, is even maybe not even necessarily point tracking loyalty programs, but creating loyalty through like creative methods of selling golf. So something we touched on in the last one is like, rather than getting into that pattern, if I have my daily fee player who maybe is involved in my loyalty program and I have my annual pass holder,
Right.
well, how do we fill that gap in the middle? Like, is that a $99 players card that entitles them to 40% off golf every time that they come out? Is it a $49 a month subscription that entitles them to a unique rate structure? Like, rather than putting them in one of those two very distinct buckets that most golf courses operate out of, it's like, how do you fill that gap in the center, particularly where we're seeing such a large influx of new golfers to the industry?
Oh yeah, totally agree. And also, if you guys ever want to talk to Dell, feel free to reach out to us. He's always open to having those conversations. He's also one of the brains behind actually one of our technology platforms called Pitch that does all the slicing and dicing on the data for emailing. So he's quite the character, but also really is dialed into technology, but also at an operator level, what's achievable, what's real. So yeah. Just a couple last 2 points here is with the loyalty programs, and again, this, there's so much more that we could really talk about, but these are sort of the key things. Is what's neat too was I've seen clubs where every time you play, and if you're part of the loyalty program, your name gets thrown into a hat for a draw at the end of the month. So I'm going to say it's probably not too hard for you to come up with maybe a 6-month program of ideas or giveaways with a number of partners and companies that you work with. But really, it's not about giving away that driver. It's really about communication, right? It's about having a reason to send out that notice, to send out that email, to send out that text, and that there's another draw coming up. Here's the winner, right? So it's all these touch points, right? And all those touch points again go back to reminding them to play golf, right? It's again putting you back up top of mind and thinking about your golf course. The other thing that I saw
Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say, like, the other thing that I saw was what's really neat is on the redemption side is a lot of businesses is they're just not giving away their own products or services anymore. We see it now with Aeroplan or other programs, but is going to the local car wash place or movie theater or you name it, right? All the businesses that are around you and working out a deal with them, right? I've even heard of some businesses giving away those services because they want to tap into the into the golf course's audience. Maybe it's some sort of contra deal, right? But allowing them to buy stuff outside of just or not buy, but redeem stuff that's outside of the golf course, or even give them access to a kind of like a dream golf course trip, right? That I'm sure that you all can call each other up and kind of put something in place there to allow that. So pretty neat stuff.
There's elements of it too where sometimes loyalty programs or sometimes customer segmentation doesn't even necessarily have to be digitally tracked. I mean, I went to a restaurant previously where as we go in and get seated, they ask if it's the first time there. And then as stuff starts to come out, plates and glasses, I'm eating off a red plate, but every other customer in the restaurant's eating off a white plate. And so I asked the server why that is. And they say, well, it's your first time at the restaurant. So now all of the servers coming out, like the food that's coming out of the kitchen, they're aware of the fact that this is a first time customer that they're trying to turn into a future customer as well. So this can be a strategy that's employed, not even necessarily from again, in the context of both public and private clubs. It's like, how do we do a better job of recognizing our first time customers or our new customers and making them comfortable at the facility and feeling like it's kind of that member for a day experience? Or in the context of a private club, like, how do we know if somebody's maybe a little squeamish because they are a new member, don't necessarily understand kind of the inner workings of the club, and how do we make that member feel really, really comfortable right away? It's good from a day-to-day staff recognition standpoint, just to put little things like that in place where you're fostering a sense of comfort in the customer that's increasing loyalty, even though there's no points attached to that. It's much more kind of qualitative.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. I think maybe just go back for a second. I think one thing I'll just add, just in regards to the loyalty program, is if you really want to get some buy-in on this, and I've seen this at some facilities, it is something that they charge for. It's like a $29.95 kind of program that gets them into it. I find that if it's free, sometimes you get it, but you don't get sometimes that buy-in to the program. So just something to think about. And I do know that these golf courses, when they kind of look at the economics of their program and the amount of money that they charge, it does go to offset some of these giveaways that they're doing, right? So you're just moving money around. Cool. So that's really all we had to kind of walk through today. Just to kind of talk a little bit about the referral program that we introduced last year. So, if you do introduce anybody to Lightspeed, to one of your members, and they sign up, we're there to give you a thank you for that of $1,000. And if you sign up, you do get a pretty cool prize, an Apple product or a Visa prepaid card. So just a reminder about that program. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on that. And then really exciting for next week's webinar is going to be on, retail side, and we're going to be bringing in somebody from Lightspeed that's actually going to kind of lives in that retail space that deals with some of our bigger clients. Name's James Brooks, and so he'll be joining us next week on that. And I think Charlie, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong on the next slide, it's April 7th.
Yep, April 7th.
Perfect. So we are available here on the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to type them away there. And if not, then we can certainly conclude our session today.
Fantastic, Matt and Charlie, thanks a lot for that. I'll open the floor to any questions that come in, but maybe I'll start with a question for you. If you guys had one recommendation as we expect the continuation of influx of new golfers in 2021, what would you recommend if there's one thing in terms of marketing to these new golfers that a club can implement this year?
Charlie, I think everyone knows what I'll say, but
No, I would say the big thing is starting to get more strategic with, I mean, it seems as if almost every golf club has some sort of an email marketing strategy, whether that's informational like newsletters or more like things regarding specials or upcoming events of the club, but just being more strategic in terms of targeting those groups. So that segmentation is so important rather than sending out what feels like a spam email, getting into that concept of personalization, starting to play with your subject lines and sending emails to specific groups. So, I mean, a colleague of mine always uses the example of like, if you're running specifically a Friday special that maybe includes a meal and a round of golf, that doesn't necessarily need to go out to everyone. It just needs to go to the people that have played on and off on Fridays in the past. Your guy who plays in seniors late on Monday morning only once a week probably doesn't need to get that same email. So it's starting to get more strategic with your efforts and looking at putting your golfers more into buckets.
I think for me, it's having a data capture strategy, right? And executing hard on that. This pandemic isn't, obviously it's not going to last forever here. Things might kind of revert back a little bit, and people that could play golf now can't anymore. As we start to see everyone kind of going back to work, but there's new golfers that are coming into your golf course, and you want to be able to retain them and bring them back, right, and communicate to them. So have that data capture program in place, right? If it's the things that we talked about or other means, if it's the Marshall, if you name it, right? There's so many ways to get that. You got to be making sure that you're getting that customer data in your system.
And constantly scrubbing that database too. So making sure that we're not sending out spam emails to john.golfer@golfer.com every week. I think anytime you look, particularly like whether it's public or private clubs, when you look into if you look really hard at your database, the amount of junk that's in there is enormous. So it's really kind of taking that time, whether you have a tool that does it through automation or you're going through, or someone's going through manually once a year and saying like, okay, what is actually real here compared to what is just noise.
Awesome. I'll do one last call out for any questions, and one more that just popped into my head is how important is age demographics in terms of how you market and communicate? And where I'm getting at is how different does a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old want to be targeted versus our baby boomer generation?
Yep,
Charlie, you want to take that one?
Yeah, that's where I think that whole, like particularly that slide that I had up previously with the phone specific data on there, we're seeing with more of an influx of young golfers into the game and people in that 20 to 40 crowd coming back and playing more golf, that there's a lot more mobile centricity to that generation, where we're still seeing, I would say, more of the boomer specific crowd using computer-based booking or booking on an iPad, whereas we're seeing with kind of our younger customers, everything. I mean, you walk into any mall. Well, right now is a bad example for malls, but you walk into any space where there's a large number of young people and it's all phones, right? So it's starting to come up with a strategy like, hey, how mobile friendly is our website right now? what do the templates that we create for our email marketing, what do they look like? Are they mobile? Are those mobile friendly? Do they show up well on a phone? Like, are we using SMS marketing? Do we have some sort of app strategy in place that we can send push notifications to, or allow them to kind of be engaged with those? So, I mean, it seems really intuitive to use phones as the example, but I think that's a really critical one to make sure that we're hitting home on.
No, 100% agree with you on that.
Fantastic. Well, guys, thanks a lot for this afternoon. Great information. And for those on or listening afterwards, we will have more content in our T-Talks news that is going out next week. And this webinar will be recorded and posted right after. So thanks again, and looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Right on.
Thanks,
Thank
Matt.
you.